Welcome everybody to a special edition of GoLocal Live here at 2:30 on Monday afternoon, downtown Providence. Want to introduce a special guest. Some folks in Rhode Island may remember Tom Frank, a lead investigative reporter at the Providence Journal, covering City Hall, everything from Buddy Cianci to the Providence City Council back in the day. Tom, thanks for joining us today.
Nice to be with you, Councilman.
Yeah, you run a special, a little bit of importance these days. You've been at the eye of the storm. A little background about you. After you left the Providence Journal, you went on to a number of leading newspapers around the country. You were a Pulitzer finalist at USA Today and did some great work. I know we referenced some pieces you did on DOT, US DOT, and highway issues. And then you went over to CNN later and obviously was at the eye of the storm on where we are in America right now on President Trump, the Mueller report, and where we're going. Your thoughts about what's taken place, then we can delve into some of the issues.
So where we are is in, I think, suspended animation right now. I think that, like everything in this country, the country is divided on this between people who think that the Mueller report is meaningless, nonsense, etc., and people who think it's, the roadmap to impeaching Trump. So where are we going to go? I think that the only people moving this are really going to be just a few members of the House of Representatives, people like Congressman Jerry Nadler, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Congressman Elijah Cummings, chairman of the Oversight Committee. The Republicans don't want anything to do with this report, so it's not going to go anywhere in the Senate. And the House leadership, meaning Nancy Pelosi, is playing it very cautiously in terms of trying to get impeachment going. And I think where you're also going to start to see some real separation is between the Democrats who are running for president and the Democrats who are in charge of the House, some of the committees, because the Democrats out there running for president, they're in Iowa, they're in New Hampshire, and nobody is talking about the Mueller report. Nobody is talking about Russia. Nobody is talking about Trump. They're talking about the sort of standard electoral issues like the economy and climate change and so forth. And I think that you're going to see some of those candidates just back away and not do much with the report. So what's going to happen now is some of the committees are going to issue subpoenas for more information, documentation. The administration is going to disregard those, and it's going to end up in another series of political and legal fights. And I just don't know if it's going to come to any conclusion one way or the other by Election Day. I think there's just no way that impeachment is going to proceed. And I don't think the Democrats are going to get copies of Trump's tax returns. Maybe they'll get a copy of the redacted report. But again, for anything to have any shock effect now and move the needle, it would have to be just extraordinary.
Elizabeth Warren came out and said Democrats should move forward in the House on impeachment. Right. AOC, everybody's favorite congressional rock star, and some of her band came out and said so. Our news editor, Kate Nagel, caught up with David Cicilline, I believe it was Friday. He shied away, sort of had the party position, sort of the Pelosi. You wonder if it's the Pelosi-Biden opinion. Of not wanting to get caught up in the morass of this, and that all the oxygen gets sucked out of the presidential run because of impeachment hearings. But there's some powerful members of the House who are pressing forward.
I mean, and you're talking about people like Jerry Nadler and a lot of companies who are senior people, they're committee chairs, and they're going to press forward. Then I don't think Nancy Pelosi can stop either of those two people. The question is how much support they will have within the party. Now, you mentioned Elizabeth Warren and Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, and certainly they have voices that resonate. But I don't think that they are really, they're sort of on the left wing of the Democratic Party, and this goes to the bigger debate you're seeing within the party between Where do they go? Do they push the Green New Deal? Do they push, the kind of tax increases that Senator Warren has talked about? Or do they, try for a more moderate approach and try to, win over the centrists in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan to try to defeat Trump? And there are two different strategies at play. And I think you're going to see both of them play out to an extent. And I just don't know, as I said, that anything definitive is going to happen that is going to substantially weaken Trump. He has a very strong base that people should not underestimate. And they're just not moved by any of what's happening with Mueller and the whole Russia.
Not a gosh darn thing will move them.
Well, that is true. As he famously said, the comment about shooting someone on Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I think Buddy Cianci had a similar saying about, I don't know, dead bodies or something.
There's a lot of Cianci and Trump, or Trump and Cianci.
That's right. Let's talk a little bit. You were at the eye of the storm. You were one of the first leading investigative reporters talking about these issues. You obviously had some controversial journalism while you were at CNN. Talk a little bit about that. And then you had a really interesting Facebook post today, which is, hey, listen, what I was trying to get at CNN, the Mueller report has tied those things together. Leading financial, is he officially an oligarch? Is Dimitri's an oligarch? Is that
yes.
The...
Well, he's either an oligarch or a friend of Putin, and,
right.
And I guess the difference there is how rich you are.
That's right.
So this gets deep into the weeds. So you should, publish a warning. This is not suitable for people who have an attention span shorter than half an hour. But
give the internet version of this.
All right, I'll try to do the readers. I'll try to do the USA Today version from where I used to work. I wrote a story a little less than 2 years ago saying that the Senate Intelligence Committee was looking into a Russian wealth fund called the Russian Direct Investment Fund.
And this is just for clarification, this is sort of a Russian-built private equity fund, right?
Exactly.
And they fund things from, I was looking at it today, health clubs, all sorts of, the biggest range of things.
And lots of countries have them,
right.
And ways of promoting economic development. And in the case of the Russian fund, it was also a way of trying to get foreigners and a lot involved. So when the fund was started back in the early 2000s, there were a lot of major American businessmen on, and like Richard Daley, the former Commerce Secretary, was on. And this was part of the Russian effort at the time to open up the country's economy to the West. And so what happened is in early 2017, so in the transition period, the head of the fund, a Russian man named Kirill Dmitriev, who is close to Putin, reached out to a number of transition team officials, including Jared Kushner, George Nader, Eric Prince, a whole range of...
And don't forget the Rhode Island connection. I believe Michael Flynn was within that construct.
Right. Right. I should know my audience. But,
that's right.
And so I wrote a story saying that the Senate Intelligence Committee was investigating this fund. And then the story pointed out that the head of the fund, this Russian named Dmitriev, had met in January 2016 with Anthony Scaramucci. This was before Scaramucci became the White House communications director, but when he was part of the Trump transition team. And that story, this is where it gets into New York Times length and away from Wall Street, USA Today length. The story ended up being retracted by CNN, and it was a very complicated and confusing set of events having to do with whether the story went through the required review and vetting by the various layers of editors and whatnot at CNN. So the story was retracted. I lost my job, but when CNN retracted the story, they never said it was wrong. They said that it didn't meet CNN's editorial standards. So let's fast forward to last Friday, and the Mueller report comes out, and there's a section that runs 12 pages that talks about this very subject, how Kirill Dmitriev was reaching out to the long cast of characters during the Trump transition, to try to basically establish goodwill and improve relations and try to get some of the sanctions waived. So that is a vindication of sorts for the story I wrote. Now, in fairness, my story said the Senate Intelligence Committee was doing the probe, and this is the Mueller probe, which is obviously different. I think it's reasonable to assume that if Mueller and his team looked into it, that the Senate Intelligence Committee is looking into it. Right. And as I say, no one ever said the story was wrong.
Right.
So it's just it's really a personal thing, which is why I put it on Facebook. And here I am, why I'm talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. You probably can't say it. I will. If CNN didn't follow its standard, I've watched Don Lemon from time to time. I'm not sure what the standard is, but we'll leave that as is. It's been, you were really at the very forefront of reporting on this space. What's your take on where Mueller got to, and what's your takeaway from it? Should he have gone further? Did he have the capacity to go further? Should he have gone further, or was that the appropriate level of investigation that he needed to stop at, and then Congress could make a decision?
All right, so there are two questions that I've read about. One is, should he have persisted in doing an interview with the president? Mm-hmm. Obviously, he stopped short of that, and he said something like, I didn't think that I was going to get anything more out of it. I had what I was going to, and that the negotiations to get an interview with the president would have taken an extraordinary amount of time and energy, and nothing more was really going to come of it. So that's question number one. Then the question number two is, should he have been should he have been less deferential to Congress and say, basically, it's not for me, the special counsel, to charge criminally. It's really, if you want to take action against the president, you do that through, you, meaning Congress, do it through impeachment. Right. I'm going to come down firmly on the fence on this. I think that as far as should he have spent a lot of time and capital trying to interview Trump, he had a deadline, not a formal deadline, but an informal deadline, which is that he couldn't issue this too close to the 2020 election.
Right,
so
absolutely.
I think, and that's real. And he had a fairly short window in which to release this report, and I think that he released it in the window. That is before the Democratic primary start and before the political season really began. So I think I kind of side with him that it's not clear he would have gotten anything. And the president has been famously evasive, and I don't mean this critically, but it's not clear that he would have gotten anything except for evidence of Trump being evasive or taking the fifth, which has a value in its own. Now, should he have been more, aggressive or gone farther? This is really a constitutional law question, and you really have to analyze it dispassionately as far as what does the law say, not, geez, this was a chance to get Trump. That's not really the issue. And I guess I also kind of side on Mueller's side and say that really removing or indicting or taking action against the president really has to be an extraordinary thing, and impeachment is extraordinarily difficult, for a reason. It shouldn't be like, passing a resolution to name the post office after, the fire chief.
Right. Tom, while we've got you, you're now at one of the leading environmental energy trade publications in America. Yeah. And, one of the issues we've raised a number of times at GoLocal is, while Democrats and the Trump administration have been whirling around on this Mueller issue, Russia collusion, for the first 2 years of the administration, simultaneously, deregulation forces within America have undone, rolled back, or are in the process of rolling back many of the strongest environmental laws and regulations of the country that took place, really since Earth Day, almost, the last 40 plus years. Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, ANWR, et cetera, et cetera. Is this a little bit of brilliance, potentially, depending on your perspective?
So like putting up a smoke screen so that they can, be like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain?
Yeah, absolutely. While everybody's looking over here at collusion and Russia, they're rolling back what took 40 years to put in place.
Well,
and your thoughts?
So that would indeed be a conspiracy theory. I don't think that this is some deliberate conspiracy.
Yeah, I'm not articulating that it was deliberate, but as it worked to their benefit. There's been, a fraction. If you look at the New York Times on a daily basis, sure, there's an environmental article from time to time, but it's Mueller and collusion 24/7 on the front page of the New York Times.
Well, I don't think so. I think that even if Mueller hadn't existed and the whole Russia investigation had not ever happened, I don't think that any more media exposure would have changed what the Trump administration tried to do and was able to do.
Yeah.
Because he's not the first one to do it. The Bush administration did a lot of the same thing, and they did not, until 9/11, have the distraction of some greater issue. I think that, they would have done it. They would have taken some heat, but they would have gone ahead. And one thing that's important to point out is the areas where the Trump administration has been able to have the most success in sort of rolling things back is regulations.
Yeah.
And executive orders, especially. And executive orders are the easiest thing in the world to undo. You just pick up a piece of paper and sign an order saying that Executive Order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is hereby rescinded.
Absolutely.
And replaced by Executive Order 6, 7, 8, 9. And that is something that I think one of the Obama administration's legacies that he did a lot of stuff by executive order, which
right.
is, the beauty of that is you do what you want. The weakness of that is that it has no legs. And
right.
That's why Trump could undo, for example, the Iran nuclear deal, because it wasn't a legislation. And you didn't have to get 60 votes or whatever, 230 votes in the House. So in some senses, it speaks to sort of the thinness of a lot of of some of the environmental legacy that's out there. And when you do things by executive order, you run the risk that your successor is going to just tear it apart on day one in office, and that's a routine part of when you have shifts in presidency. So I don't think that Trump is doing things in the dark of night. I think he's doing things. It happens to be not getting a lot of attention, but it's not changing his agenda.
Do you think the country will refocus now that there's at least some lull in this conflict, cleared of collusion? Congress needs to make a decision. Obviously, he will never be removed from office in all likelihood, as the
right.
Senate is controlled by Republicans. He could be impeached, as Clinton was. But not removed from office. That would require a vote of the Senate.
Probably not in the short term. You have, House Judiciary and House Oversight setting up hearings with Attorney General Barr and trying to get Mueller as witnesses, and those are going to be, those will be live on cable. Those will be dominant. So I don't see it happening in the near term, and pretty soon we're going to get into presidential debates.
Absolutely.
And I think that, that one's going to segue into the other. So I'm not optimistic that the whole Trump-Mueller Russia thing is just going to go away, because there are a lot of people who don't want it to go away.
Right. Tom, I want to thank you so much for Skyping in today. Outstanding journalist, known you for a long time. Tremendous career at USA Today, Pulitzer finalist. Leading thought person in investigative journalism. Congratulations. Hopefully we can get you back on some other issues in the future. Thanks so much for
Thanks a lot, Josh.
Skyping in today. Everybody, we'll be back in about 15 minutes with the rest of Small Business Monday. And we've got a range of folks, including talking to Ernie Almonte about World Trade Day. Thanks so much.